for a lot of people, it's difficult to talk about their feelings or the situation they're in. I think that becomes even more difficult when you do that online because there is only a camera, you know. When you get together, there is an environment where you can open up to one another. Right. And then you can hear the thoughts of your employee say, well, I'm not so happy anymore because of, you know, I don't learn anymore, or I get job offers, I get better paid, whatever. But then I know, and then I get in a position to do something about it.
Welcome back, everybody, to the latest episode of the GoBright Podcast. In this episode, we're going to talk about the ever-changing environment in regards to finding and retaining talent. I'm not going to do that alone, obviously. I'm going to be here with Sara from Smart Talent, who is an expert in recruitment and, of course, therefore, in finding and retaining talent. And, of course, again, joining us is Chris from GoBright, who will share with us his experience in finding talent for his team. And, of course, as an employee himself of GoBright, how he experiences this changing environment. Do you guys want to tell a little bit about yourself just to get into the conversation a bit, or do you just want to go straight into the questions?
Doesn't matter for me. Maybe a small introduction of Smart Talent.
Sure.
That was founded in 2015, 9 years ago, and we are specialized in placing professionals for permanent jobs in sales, finance, HR, IT positions in all different kind of industries. And GoBright is a customer of Smart Talent, and together we have to manage the difficulty in hiring people and what's the impact of remote working in this market. So,
nice, yeah. Very, very interesting. I think that is very relevant for today. Mm-hmm. You already mentioned today's landscape, of course, is quite different than it was back in the day, especially in regards to finding and retaining talent. But let's start with finding talent, because I think that is, of course, where it starts for a lot of companies. Finding new talent, where to find them, and later we'll talk about how to make sure that they stay in your company and are happy. So obviously in today's landscape, we have a lot more remote working, hybrid working. Sara, you founded your company about 9 years ago, so you've seen that whole change throughout, I would say, history. How has remote work affected finding talent? How would you say?
Well, nowadays companies have the world instead of a located area. So the talent pool has become much bigger now. For instance, for you, you can hire employees around the world instead of only in Amsterdam.
Yep.
Because of, the possibility to work remotely makes the talent pool much bigger nowadays. So finding talent is nowadays easier than it was 9 years ago, also because of the influence of the internet. Now you can find people more easy. You can find them on, for instance, LinkedIn. It's a big pool of talent.
Yep.
So nowadays it's actually more easy to find talent. It makes it a lot sooner, or how do you say what's the right pronouncement? Recruiting nowadays is it's sooner. So not sooner.
Right.
What's the word?
Faster, quicker, maybe.
Faster, quicker.
Yeah, exactly. You find people sooner. Yes. Yes.
The recruitment process is faster, quicker.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Does it also include the right people? Because this is more about the amount and the way it can be quick. Mm-hmm. But if the world is the pool that we can gain the people from, how do we find the right ones?
Exactly.
By hiring me.
Nice.
Okay, touché. But that's why you're the expert, right? So how do you do that then? Because if you have somebody in San Francisco, but he has to work in Amsterdam, for example, how does that work?
Well, you have a different ways of interview your candidates, and you interview them on a remote manner, like a video call. That's the first impression. then you can invite the candidate over to your place, even though if the candidate lives in the US or wherever in the world, it's important that you have a personal conversation with your talent. And you can introduce an assessment to know what kind of person is in front of you. So there are different ways of exploring your talent.
Interesting. So you mentioned having a video call with a potential candidate, and then after that, inviting them over if you feel like there's a cultural fit there. Is that always the way to go? Because I feel like nowadays it's very easy to contact someone through video calls. But if I speak from my own experience, I do feel like there is definitely a difference between talking to someone on a video call or on the phone. I remember I talked to Chris a couple of times on the phone in preparation for this podcast, but it was different when I saw him in real life and we could, interact face to face.
Yeah.
Do you think it's mandatory to always see someone in real life, or?
Yes, because in a video call you can't see the same non-verbal cues instead of when you have a personal in-person conversation. The non-verbal cues are very important. Also to feel the way the candidate is feeling that day, the energy of the candidate. You can't feel that when you have an interview by a video call. So an in-person interview is always very important to have with your talent for the future.
Right. And would you say then, you start with a video call, I guess, and then you invite everyone also to like a real life conversation, or would you say there is some kind of filtering that you can do on a video call?
Depends on my my client needs. Yes. So mostly 9 years ago, every person that we interviewed was in person because video call was not because of the COVID period. The video call and Teams sessions are become very popular. So it depends on my client's needs. If they want me to interview them in person, always absolutely we will do that. But it's not always necessary in our process.
Right.
But for the clients, I think it's important to meet the candidate in person.
Right. Right. So it depends on your client's needs, on the role probably also that the candidate might fill. Definitely. Right. That makes a lot of sense. Chris, you might have some experience with doing job interviews. I would assume you manage people. How do you tackle this in this new landscape? Like, is it more video calls? Do you like that? Do you not like that?
Oh, it's very funny. We're actually in the middle of a process of finding some new staff.
Okay.
And my usual habitat is to invite people to come to the office. So specifically this week, I was waiting 2 times with coffee and tea and all kinds of stuff. And we had a room booked, and because we're good at it, of course, but nobody showed up because they were waiting at Teams.
Oh, wow.
So you have to be very specific in the first place to make sure that both parties understand, okay, how are we going to do this?
Okay, yeah.
But it's like Sara says, you can do a first hinge via Teams, but for me, the biggest issue is that you cannot look each other in the eye. It's impossible to do. And that's very important for me personally, to look the other in the eye and see, hey, who are you? That's even more important to us than what can you do?
Right.
So I prefer to do it in person. So if I would do it online, it's mainly because I have a doubt about the candidate.
Okay.
And then I would say, okay, well, let's do a first quick one online and see if the doubts can be taken away. And then it's probably a qualifier. Okay. And then we take the next step to be a personal meeting.
Right.
So in that case, it's a handy tool or just one step in the process.
Yeah.
So it could be very convenient, but it could also be just a useful tool to make sure that I take the right decision to invest time.
Exactly. Yeah. So it can help with efficiency, with talking to more people, but you shouldn't rely on it solely, from what I understand from you.
Yeah, and I think there's also a difference that if you start doing it now, it's more like, hey, it's handy. But we also acquired people during the COVID period. We were not allowed to meet people, so the only tool you had was to do it online. And that was also very difficult because then there's nothing else. There is no other process. You have to do it. And I think still today that if I'm being very honest, I don't want to go back there. You know. So now you have the possibility to meet people. Let's go back to meeting one another.
Definitely, yeah.
But that's maybe a generational thing. I don't know. But it's lying underneath it. So we use it when it's convenient. But if you don't have to, we just want to meet people. Yeah.
Right. So okay. That makes a lot of sense. However, I do think you just mentioned if you have like a candidate maybe from the United States, then it would still, of course, if the means are there, be good to somehow meet them. But of course, nowadays, there's also companies that, because of the internet and the video calls and all those possibilities, they decide to be fully remote. So the companies with people working from all over the world that only communicate through these video calls. What is your stance on that? Do you think it's good that we can hire more broadly, or should we be cautious?
Yeah, it depends on what the company offers to the remote employees. It's very important that the communication, that the company offers technical tools to work in an efficient remotely way. So communication is very important. How do you create a good teamwork when everybody works remote? It's very important that the company is very clear about their expectations of the employees when they only work remote. Then it's important to create a good vibe along the employees altogether, that they have
a clear understanding or something.
Well, that the employee feels the benefits of working for this employer. So the commitment is very important, to create commitment from the employer for the company they work for. So it's a challenge, I think, for companies to create teamwork. And also, it can be a challenge because of the rate of burnout. You can create a burnout if employees only work remotely, because they find it difficult to set up boundaries in work-life balance. So it can be an advantage to have a better work-life balance when you work completely remote, but it can also be a disadvantage because of they have difficulties in setting their own boundaries in work and life.
So that means that an employer has to train people and to make sure that you help them with setting those boundaries.
Absolutely.
That could be a solution for employers then.
Definitely. And be very clear about your expectations for the employees.
Right.
What do you expect from them?
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Very good point. That makes a lot of sense, to be honest. So you just briefly touched on the work-life balance, of course, and that can be difficult. I can imagine one of the reasons being, if you work remotely, then there is no specific physical office space where you go to, so it's difficult to when you leave the office space, it's easier to leave your work behind because you're physically leaving a building and going back home. Remote workers obviously don't have that, which brings me to the office space in general. Is that space still mandatory? Do we still need it to find good talent, or is it maybe it changed? Or
I think it's changed, but I think it's still necessary for the employees to feel the connection with the office. how does it look like, the office where I work for? Can I be proud of that office? How is everything arranged in that office? The furniture, working places, how's the coffee? So I think it's still it's important to have a kind of a hometown for your employees, where they can feel at home and where they can come home. Even though it's work, if you can create an environment where they feel at home, I think it's better for the results in every day that they work, and they feel very comfortable. I do believe, yeah.
Nice.
What do you think?
Yeah, do you experience the same thing at GoBright? Because you have office spaces, I assume.
I fully agree, because the office is part of the identity of the company.
Yeah.
Right.
And I strongly believe in that. So if you're going to work for a company, it becomes also part of your working identity. So you want to identify yourself. And that the preference could be different for everybody, of course. But as an employer, you have to set your standard. You have to show your identity. That means for customers coming in, or that means for employees coming in. And I think these days the requirements for employees for an office environment are much higher than years ago, because
definitely,
if you can work 5 days from home, and home is where you feel the most safe, probably, unless you have a difficult situation. But in a normal situation, it's the most probably likable place where you are. So if you are drawn to get to the office, there should be a reason for that. That's either to meet people, to work together on something, maybe a creative session or whatsoever. So you need to come to the office. And if you have to go there, you want to make sure it's a great experience. So the coffee should be very good. That's why you see all these coffee machines now, not the cheap ones anymore, but it should be an Italian one, because the coffee should be better than at home.
Yeah.
That's an experience, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I think these days offices are changing. And I also want to be able to arrange my own day. So I need to be empowered to make sure that if I go, I have a meeting room at my available for me, or a desk, or I could stow away my stuff in a locker or whatsoever. So, and that should be changed, because not every office is equipped like that today. So exactly. I do think that it's still significant to have a very good office environment. It can be smaller, of course. It doesn't have to be that big. You don't have to have all these remote areas maybe anymore. But the head office or the main local offices, they should be very well equipped. Yeah.
Nice.
Absolutely.
Is there specific things about the office that you think are important in finding talent specifically? Or is it mainly the job interviews that you would say it's for?
Well, I think it's important for the employee that the future company where they're going to work for is very flexible. So you have to organize flexible workplaces, and the employee needs to get the opportunity to work from home, hybrid, and to work at the office. So the special needs at the office should be Italian coffee, a good tea, a good chair, and a good desk, and a good environment, but also the flexibility that employers offer to their employees to work hybrid as well as at the office. I think that a good combination is very important for the future employee.
Right. So from what I understand from both of you, the office space almost becomes nowadays is a bigger part of what you offer as a company. So it's not just working hours, salary, work environment. It's also literally, this is our office space.
Yeah, and a hometown.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's a homey feel. It's good coffee. It's the full package is what it needs to be.
Yeah, definitely.
I think a part of that, obviously, of course, is that in today's landscape, there's a lot of work. A lot of people can choose between employers. That was pretty different back in the day. Obviously, that fluctuates every now and then. But nowadays, we do live in a time where, as someone who's looking for a job, especially in certain areas, they can definitely pick between employers, and employees can definitely put out certain demands in order to be persuaded to work for someone. And that obviously brings us to the second part of this podcast, which is also retaining talent. Obviously, a lot of people might be looking for a different job nowadays, seeing if there's better offers out there. So hybrid working, remote working, how has that affected retaining talent? How do you keep people inside your company with this whole hybrid working environment?
I think it's very important to offer remote work to your employers. It can be an advantage, but also a disadvantage. The advantage is that employees needs to feel flexibility, a kind of a freedom. So they need to have a good work-life balance. So that's the advantage. The disadvantage can be setting boundaries in hybrid working. If you work complete remotely, some people enjoy it and never want to go to the office. So it depends as well on what are the needs of the employees. But if you don't offer remote working at all, then I do believe you will miss a big percentage of job seekers. So I do believe it's important, if you want to retain your talent, to offer what the needs are of the employee. So if your employee, and it also depends on the job, of course.
Yes, yeah.
So the job has to allow that you can work remotely. But if you don't offer it as an employer, then I do believe you will miss a lot of talent in this global market at this moment.
Right. You will miss a lot, and you might even lose a lot of talent as well because other companies...
exactly, yes, because other companies offer remote working, so they choose for the other company.
Right. In your expertise, and you don't have to give an exact number, but do you feel like companies have a specific balance, like a certain trend that you see? Is it like 50% at home, 50% in the office, or is that really dependent on a role? Or
yes, it's... Well, nowadays, I do believe they offer it more because the employees demand working for a company that offers hybrid working. So I do believe you will miss chances if you don't offer it in this market. So, of course, companies offering more hybrid working, otherwise they cannot attract the talent. So that's what you mentioned at this moment in the job market. But also, it depends also if corporate international companies offer it more, and then small companies. And it depends also on the work that you offer. So the jobs that you offer. Some kind of jobs you have to be present every day,
right?
On the working floor. But a type of when you have an international job like Chris, you travel around the world and you do your work remotely constantly. But you're also a manager, so you have to manage your team as well.
Exactly.
And I think it's not possible to manage your team when you're not there.
Right.
So it really depends on the jobs.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Interesting though, because you mentioned big corporates would have more hybrid working than smaller companies. I would assume, like before talking to you, that it would be the other way around. Like in my head, it would be the small progressive companies that are all, but if I understand you correctly, it's actually the bigger companies that are more focused on it.
Yeah, the bigger international companies.
Right. Interesting. Chris, we already briefly mentioned that you're a manager, of course, and hybrid working also means that there's times where you don't see your team, where you don't see your talent. How do you deal with that? Does that have a negative impact on retaining your talent? Do you easily lose touch with them, or how do you deal with that?
Well, it's just experiencing. That's where it starts. So I sometimes think that it's the same with my children. They don't do what I say, they do what I do. So leading by example, for my opinion, that's where it starts. And that's so difficult doing hybrid, because if you see me online, you only see this part of me, and you hear me talk and you hear me answer questions, but that's it. You don't see what I do. You cannot copy my behavior if you want to. You cannot. To learn from me is more difficult. So for my opinion, you have to spend time with each other. And it doesn't have to be necessarily 40 hours a week. But there should be a significant amount of time that you can share. Right. If new candidates come in, they're all looking for acknowledgement. It's one of the most important things that I hear constantly. I want to be seen. I want to make an impact. I want to be praised for it. Yeah, and I want to be acknowledged. Yeah. So if that's so important, then we have to make sure that we create an environment where that is possible. And from my opinion, that's in the personal meetings. The online ones are very handy, so you can be very quick, exchange some operational stuff, for example. Yeah. But growing together, making sure you develop yourself, so that you want to stay with us because we are good for you, because it helps you to grow personally and also in your job and have a future perspective. We have to spend time with one another. Yeah. And that's why I constantly do that.
Right. Yeah. Right. So it's really, you want to be able to lead by example, which is very difficult in a digital environment, of course. Yeah. And you mentioned that people want to be acknowledged. They want to be seen. Yeah. They want to could you elaborate a little bit on that? Because does that mean just, saying hi to them at the office space? Does that make someone feel acknowledged, or how far does that go?
Well, from my perspective, that goes quite far. I always want to know from my people, how are you doing? So because, and not only on the work, but if you allow me to look into your personal situation, I will try to do that. Why? If you feel good because you're happy, you probably will be very effective in your work too. If you're unhappy at home, it will have an effect on your productivity when you work. So we talk about it. And for a lot of people, it's difficult to talk about their feelings or the situation they're in. And I think that becomes even more difficult when you do that online, because there's only a camera, So when you get together, there is an environment where you can open up to one another. Right. And then you can hear the thoughts of your employee say, well, I'm not so happy anymore because of, I don't learn anymore, or I get job offers, I get better pay, whatever. But then I know. And then I get in a position to do something about it.
Right.
Yes, you have definitely a better connection.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very connect. Do you, going a bit off track here, but do you have a similar experience? Because I imagine you also have people working in your company, right? It's always a bit meta, because you also find talent, of course, but you also have talent working for you. Yeah. How is that?
I tried to recruit them once. Funny thing.
Sorry.
How do you deal with that in your own company? Because people in your company might also want to work remotely or hybridly, or.
Well, we created a real hometown. Our office is a real hometown. So everybody likes to come to the office every day. And we have a day start every day at 8:30. We start the day together. And it works better when we are at the office, because we hear from each other what is happening. It makes it more like a team. We work quicker, so we don't have to wait for answers. If I have answers or they want to know something from me, then we walk to each other and it goes faster. So for me, I really like to have all the employees at the office. But if they want to work from home, of course, I offer that. But it's very important that that the expectations that I have for my employees are clear, and that they feel ownership for their job. I think that's also an important issue for employers to offer hybrid work. How is the ownership of the employee, and do they feel mature enough to know how to move with the freedom that they get from the employer? So, but for me, I really enjoy having the people around me.
Right. Yeah. I can imagine in your field that it's very social. You talk to a lot of people. You have to get into that, because I personally one of the companies that I do things for is fully remote, and every year they have an offsite where people come together to work, and I do experience that, for example, brainstorming or coming up with creative ideas is just a breeze in like face to face, where it's quite difficult for me to do it on a video call. You need different models and like maybe use some kind of software to write down ideas or something. But then in real life, I can resonate with what you're saying.
Definitely.
Having that team feeling.
Yeah.
Nice. So like we mentioned before, you founded your company close to 9 years ago. It's a pretty long time. Yeah. So it's I would say you've experienced different stages, or maybe different like environments of like the working environment. Has anything changed specifically before and after COVID, I would say, because that was like a big impact, I think, on the way we work and how that goes. And specifically, are there certain things more difficult now, more easy now?
Well, yes, it changes a lot. And what I mentioned before, you have the world as a talent pool. So because you offer remote working, you can have employees around the world, around the globe. So it's not necessary to recruit employees 30 kilometers of your physical office. So you have a very big area of recruiting talent.
Right.
Now it's the globe instead of your own village.
Right.
That's changed, and it's the hiring process is much quicker. Nowadays, because of internet, the employment branding, the visibility of an employer is different than 9 years ago. Because of the internet, the pool of talent is much bigger. Professionals are putting their resume on a different kind of job sites.
Right.
So the visibility of talent and fresh employees is much bigger than 9 years ago.
Yeah.
And you have also how do you say, an application through WhatsApp, for instance. So you see your employer in 1 minute, because they do their application by a video call, for instance.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's a lot broader, like you already mentioned, which obviously on the one hand makes it, easier because there's more people, but also I can imagine it makes it more difficult, like Chris mentioned before, because how do you pick the right people? And of course that's where you come in to sort of be that filter and find like the right match.
But it also works the other way around, because the candidates can dig into your company more because they can filter your whole website. But we have a whole lot of information about the candidates too. What do you think of all the social media platforms where people post up there?
Yeah.
So if you just Google somebody, it gives you a good view on who they really are.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's funny, because what I experienced when I start asking questions about the things I've seen, and they look at you, how do you know that? Because you posted it, right? So people both ways.
People are maybe not as aware that they're
definitely
they're
not.
definitely not.
Right. No. That's very interesting. And so online presence, I would say, is also a big factor nowadays.
Absolutely.
Wow. I'm going to Google myself right after this to see if there's any awkward stuff.
I will advise you to do that.
That's important to everybody to do that every once in a while.
Nice. So one last thing, you also mentioned online presence for a company. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? What does that look like? Is that just LinkedIn, or are we talking multiple social media platforms or other ways?
Yes, definitely. Multiple social media platforms is important for a company to show their presence online. So you have to be present on Instagram, I do believe nowadays, Snapchat, maybe TikTok. It depends on what kind of employees you need as a company. But definitely on LinkedIn. So your online presence is very important, and also continuing as a company to place maybe every month a post on the internet of your company, what they are doing, the successions. So it's very important, yes, to be online, represented it. Yes, yeah.
No. that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned LinkedIn as a place where obviously it's a social media platform specifically designed, I think, for networking, finding talent, and finding an employer as well if you're looking for a job. Well, when I applied to work at McDonald's when I was 14 years old, it was just a matter of getting my CV and my letter of application, printing it out, going to my local McDonald's, giving it to the manager, and then giving them my phone number, and they would give me a call to come in to have a job interview, basically. That has changed as well, I would say. Like,
definitely.
do people still email their resumes to different companies, or is that process changed?
Well, they don't show up like you did. You went to the McDonald's and you give your letter in person. Well, nowadays, if my candidates come to me with if I want to hire somebody and he comes to my office and give me a letter, then he will be very...
you probably give him the job anyway.
yeah,
but for just showing up.
Yeah, just for showing up. Or sometimes we get letters still, but that are from persons who are 60 plus, they're living in early days. So
different generation.
Yeah.
Right.
But now also that way is has become a more sooner, quicker, better, because the applicants are by internet. So every day we have a full mailbox of applicants, but that's also a lot of garbage.
And when you say letters, you mean like physical letters people send you?
Motivation. We
wow.
Actually, we always ask for motivation from our candidates, because I do believe it's still very important, because of the much possibilities the employers have. It's very important that I need to know why what's the intrinsic motivation of the candidate for this specific job. Yeah. So if they don't want to write for me motivation, then I think, how is in what way are they interested in this kind of job if they don't want to send me a motivation?
Yeah, and the company as well, wanting to know why you want to work at a certain place.
Yeah.
Right.
Why they choose for that job specifically.
Exactly. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now we've talked a lot about how expectations and offers from employers has changed over the last couple of years, but obviously a lot has changed as well in terms of expectations from employees, things that they expect from a company. Sara, how would you describe those differences? Are there differences between back in the day and now between the expectations?
Yes, definitely, because the employee find it very important to have a workplace where they can choose if they want to work remotely or at the office. So it's very important that you offer as an employer the flexibility, that you offer as an employer the technical tools which are necessary to work very good remotely. And the demands and the needs of the employee are not only the needs to have the opportunity to work flexible, but also the environment of the company by itself. So the hometown of the company is also very important. The feeling they got with the company, if they feel like home, if there's a team spirit. So it's in my opinion, it always stays very important to go 1, 2, or 3 days a week to the office and meet your coworkers, to create a very nice environment.
Is that also expected by employees? Because obviously nowadays we talk a lot about people wanting to work from home because it's an option now. But have you also experienced people that specifically want that safe space, want that good office space?
Yeah, definitely. In my hiring process, I meet a lot of people. I talk a lot of people with a lot of people, and I think more the percentage of employees who are choosing companies that offer flexible work becomes even more bigger. The next generation, Generation Z, they find it much more important to work for companies which offering flexible workplaces. So it's and they really choose for companies that offer flexible workplaces and hybrid working and remote working. It depends also on the person. Some person needs to go to the office every day because they need to have the chit chat with their coworker. But some employees would love to work every day at home. They don't feel the need to come at the office. They do their thing at home, and they really enjoy that. So it also depends on the employee by itself.
Right. Do you, Chris, experience a difference in those expectations with people that maybe have been working at GoBright for a longer time, with like pre-COVID, after COVID? Or like, do you see a difference in their expectations as an employees, or has that remained similar?
Yeah, and not only in GoBright, also for myself as an employee in the end, or a coworker. I travel a lot, so my weeks are not always the same. But for example, if I have 1 week, I go every day to the office, it's a routine. And I think that the majority of the working people these days, they have their own routines. So if I go to the office 5 days in that week, I go up the same time in the morning, I have my breakfast, I drive the same way to the office on the same street, I come in, the first thing I do is get a cup of coffee, etc., etc., etc. So, but it goes by itself. And if I need anything, I get it because I am there. You know? But now the other way around. If you're working mainly from home, you have your routines at home. So the 1 or 2 days you go to the office, this is disruptive. It's different. It's like you go on holiday, you know. When you're at home, you just do your home routine, and then all of a sudden, in 2 weeks we go on holiday. So we have to plan that because we have to pack our suitcase, we have to make sure the passports are right, and we have to buy a sunscreen and all kinds of stuff. Well, that synonym is exactly, if I go to the office, what do I need to arrange? And all of a sudden, I have to make sure that I have a meeting room probably, or I have a desk, or a locker to store my stuff away, or an area where I can park my car or my bike or whatever. And that I have to prepare that because it's not normal anymore that it's waiting there for me because it doesn't know that I'm there.
Right.
So how do we provide our employees the right tools to do that? It's not only having a laptop and a camera so you can do remote. Actually, that's not remote working, but remote co-working, right? Because that's what you use to get in touch with somebody. But how do I make sure that I prepare my day to the office?
Right.
And that's what we at GoBright find very interesting to do. And that's what we provide in our software, for example, to make sure that the employee can arrange his whole office day and make it a great experience. And on the back end, the employer gets all the data of all these movements. So the employer can say, okay, what does this mean after 3 months? All these people coming in and going out certain days in the week. And this data helps me to make my office a better experience in the end. Because I can decide on data and not on feeling how many space do we need? How many rooms and et cetera, et cetera. So it's very interesting. And I do believe that we're just at the start of this process. It will be for the coming 3-5 years. We will gain a lot of more knowledge together.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any other specific things that you wanted to mention or talk about regarding this subject? Maybe about the company or about the things you do. If not, that's also fine, and we'll close it off. But
my tip is that I do believe it's better for an employer to offer as well remote as in-office jobs. So because I do believe that you will miss a certain percentage of your fresh new employees if you don't offer a combination of remote work and on-site work.
Right.
So I think it's very important to be flexible in what you offer to your new talent.
Anything you wanted to add, Chris?
Yeah, I think people are your most valuable asset. You know, and all your assets you have to maintain. So how do you maintain your most valuable assets? And from my perspective, you have to invest in their lives, not only as an employee, but also to make sure that they grow in their being. So we offer a lot of education, for example, because if you learn, you grow. And we also love it when people are growing more in depth into what they do, or that they explore that what they do today is not quite actually what they want to do, so that they can move within the company. So you keep your asset in, you be good for one another, you grow together, and you become more smart. And that doesn't work for everybody, but it's a great way to do it, because then you can build a long-term relationship. You keep the knowledge in, somebody else gets to grow in a safe environment. And that's the way that we try to make sure that people stay in for a long time, to find out if you're always in the right spot. If not, that we can move internally, or that we grow in more depth, so that you can grow yourself and become a more valuable asset to yourself and to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And my tip would be, as a future employee, to really look to your intrinsic motivation to work for a company. I think it's very easy nowadays to apply to a gajillion companies because of the internet, but find the one that intrinsically makes you motivated to work there. Because I think on the long run, from what I understand from you two as well, that's just going to be a healthy relationship and just a way healthier working environment, I would say. So be intrinsically motivated and check your online presence, because they will Google you.
Yes.
Thank you again for tuning in and listening to this latest episode of the GoBright podcast. This week we talked about finding and retaining talent. Next week we will talk about how smart technology can improve your experience at the workplace. See you then.